Because most entrepreneurs, especially when they come to designing a business, they design it with the first filter being, how much money can I make with this? And while that works for a little while, maybe, if that is not honoring what it is that you'd like to do long term, that's when you wake up unfulfilled one day. And by the way, there's no guarantee that you're going to make the money anyway. So along the journey, you might as well enjoy the process, right? By the way, when you are doing something towards your vision and something that you get excited about, you'll work 3 times harder for it because it won't feel like work.
All right, guys, here we go now. It is time to unlock more doors to deals. We're real estate investors here. We're real estate agents here, and we all have one thing in common. We believe that we can. We can live the life of our purpose. We can create financial freedom. We can build a better life for those that we love, and we can live the life of our dreams. I don't care if you're trying to do your first deal or your 500th this year. You can get to the next level, and we're here to help. Welcome to Doors to Deals. I'm your host and founder, Jim Manning. Today's episode can be found on our website, doorstodeals.com/004. Thank you so much for tuning in. It's time to get excited because this episode applies to you no matter what. It doesn't matter who you are, what your business is. The content on this show is critical for you to get somewhere. To get to where you want to go, the first step is to have a vision of where you want to go. You see, leadership does not exist without vision. And today we're in luck that we're going to actually talk to a vision expert and a personal mentor of mine, Shaun Mccloskey. Shaun runs a mastermind group that I'm a part of called Leadership Boardroom, and they specialize in bringing professionals together and helping you with your life vision and your business vision. So today, the first half, we're going to talk about your different departments of your business. There's an Imagineering department of your business, an engineering department of your business, and an implementation part of your business. We're going to talk about how being aware of each one of those departments is critical, and spending time in each one of those departments is critical to success. Then in the second half, we're going to talk about some free tools and some insights that you can leverage to help you design your business around your strengths, around how you're hardwired and what you enjoy to do. All right, guys, let's get started.
Shaun, you're all dressed up all fancy. This is the fanciest I've ever seen you dress up. What happened this morning? What were you up to?
I took a shower today and everything. It's good.
Oh, that's great. So, okay. Well, so like vision is the topic. I kind of wanted to, why don't you just tell us kind of a little bit about your background, kind of when you started out as an investor, like those eons ago, decades ago, or whatever the heck it was.
Hey.
Like, so when you first started out, like kind of what all, kind of take us back to that. Cause that was a hot minute ago.
Well, so I started flipping houses back in 2003 and had a corporate job that, I busted my butt for 7 years and built it up. I got to the point where I was in charge of $10 million worth of revenue a month in the corporation that I worked in, and I built it to a pretty sizable scale. So I was in charge of 5 states and 13 salespeople, and we did pretty well with it. But one day the bosses came to me and said, "Hey, we need you to let go of half of your staff. Times are tough." And that turned into, over the next 6 months, you need to let go of all of your staff. Times are really tough. And then eventually that turned into, now it's time for you to go. And so I learned pretty quickly that there's no security in having a job. Certainly no more than there is in being an entrepreneur and working for yourself. And so I went and decided I'm not going to bust my butt anymore for somebody else to just let me go. If I'm going to bust my butt, it's going to be for my own business and my own vision. I got the first glimpse of business vision, but that being said, I started to flip houses back then, and my first year was awful. My first deal that I ever took on was here in Chesterfield, and it was a house that I bought for $250,000, thinking I could just put some paint and carpet in it and sell it for $300,000, and that's not how it worked. I actually ended up putting it on the market for $300,000, and it didn't sell. And next thing you know, it didn't sell for 6 months, and I was lowering the price. Until finally I ended up having to lease that property out for the next 3 years. And that didn't work either. When I finally sold that house 3.5 years later, I had lost a grand total of $86,000 on that property. And I will tell you the reason why I did that is because I followed the vision of the guy selling it to me, which also there's a little conflict of interest here. The guy selling it to me was also my mentor at the time. And so there was a conflict of interest in selling me a property that he is painting this beautiful picture of what is possible. And so I bought into his vision. And as a result of that, that wasn't reality. But I didn't know how to have my own vision back then because I was trying to listen to everybody else. And so, when things don't work, guess who's left holding the bag? Me. And so this vision stuff is so important, because if you don't have your own, you will live somebody else's. And sometimes somebody else's vision comes with some serious consequences, especially when you're working in a corporate environment. You're following the vision of the boss you have in your organization, or your boss's boss, or 5 levels up, and so on. So what we're going to talk about today, I think, is one of the most important things that you can master, because without this, I think you have no life and you have no business. And of course, none of us got in our own business from that in the first place.
So you started out negative 87 in the hole in your first year of investing.
Yes.
Oh my God. I know why I talk to you. I talk to you all the time so I can feel better about myself. So I have a web.
Go on to the second. Well, at that point, I didn't have any choice. When I left corporate America, I was making about 85 grand a year, which, at the time when I'm like 25, 26 years old, that's
amazing. Yeah.
Well, pretty impressive. But now I flipped this first house, and now I have to go work in corporate again for another year just to break even on this bad house that I took on. So going back to a job, it really wasn't an option for me at that point. I was like, I gotta make good on this. I gotta get good at this. And if I don't, I'm going under. And so it became a necessity. At first, it was kind of a necessity because I didn't want to go back to getting a job again. But then when you lose that kind of money on a deal, you now have to sink or swim. And so I chose to come on. My second, I got about 13 grand on. My third one after that, we made more, and so on. And here we are. We flipped a few hundred houses later, to the point where today I actually don't even flip houses anymore, not to the degree that I used to. Today I coach a lot of people who do, and I coach a lot of national speakers and national coaching organizations, and I basically help people get out of their own way. And to do that, it all starts with the vision. So I'm glad we're talking about this today.
Yeah, and the only thing to really add to that, guys, is like don't judge yourself based on someone else's journey. Like I think it's really easy to look at like a Ryan Wessels and say, oh my gosh, he's done all these deals, and Three Doors Properties is doing all these deals, and I mean that's like if you're starting out, that's like what you could do when you're 13 years in, right? So don't get caught up in like that. What's it, keeping up with the Joneses, or like that mindset. Like Shaun just said to you guys, like Shaun's one of the most successful entrepreneurs that I know, guys. And he just said he was negative 87 grand his first year in, and he was able to dig himself back out of it. I think too often we play this like small game. We don't play the infinite game where we're like investing in real estate. You look at it's something you can do over the course of your life, right? And it takes a little bit. I was, in the web class that I do, I talk about how I was negative 2,500 in the hole after my first year, because I didn't have the balls to buy a house that I lose 86 grand on. Maybe I don't know, but okay. Cool. All right, Shaun. Well, let's get into it, man. So tell me more about this business vision.
Okay, so let me start by finding how this relates to a real estate business specifically. And so, even as I know you've got a wide variety of people on this call. You got people who are maybe brand new and haven't done their first deal. Then you got people who have done lots of deals. And so, as you're building your business vision, the first thing I want to tell you is it's got to be yours. Even as you're learning and getting education, whether it be from Three Doors or from a course that you got or from a book that you're reading, you got to keep in mind you're reading other people's visions for what they want, and you got to learn how to filter that with your own vision. If you don't have one, that's really impossible to do. So when I went out and I first started my real estate business, for example, I went and learned from many mentors. I spent a lot of money on education, and I think that's a good thing to do. But one of the guys that I learned from, his name was Chris Kirshner. And Chris was a brilliant mind. He was really good at running a business, really good at making money. What I didn't know at the time was what everything else in his life looked like. So, you mentioned doing lots of deals. While that can be really good, that's not everybody's vision. So that can also be a detriment. Matter of fact, if you're doing lots of deals with skinny margins, you may be busy all the time, but you're not making any more money than somebody who's doing considerably less deals than you are. And so you have to decide, do you want to go after volume, or do you want to be the little guy who just goes after quality? Because I've got I coach, for example, 2 people. One of my best coaching students last year flipped 800 houses in a year. I mean, that's a lot, 800 houses, right? And so, but one of my other top guys only flipped 3 or 4 houses, and they have 2 very different businesses. Both of them are living their vision. The guy with 800 houses, he has a staff. He's got a pretty big operation. The guy flipped 3 or 4 houses. He's got 1 assistant. And so, you could say, well, which one of them is more successful? Well, it depends on what your vision looks like. The guy flipping 3 or 4 houses a year who is debt-free, has hardly any bills. He's making roughly 6 figures on each house. How good of a life can you live making 300 or 400 grand a year with no bills? I mean, that's a lot of money when you don't have a lot of debt and expenses and overhead and everything that comes along with it. And so that's his vision. But the guy with 800, he can't think that small. He's not satisfied, even if that is performing financially the way he wants to perform. He thinks bigger than that. He can't just remain happy with that. So when I started to go and learn from Chris Kirschner years ago, Chris taught me how to build my flipping business into an actual business, which sounds really good on the surface. Matter of fact, he got me to the point where I was flipping about 70 houses a year. But about a year into my mentorship with this guy, I found out that his wife left him one day, very recently when we had this conversation. He had made $950,000 that day, and that was also the same day his wife said, I'm leaving you and I'm taking my kid with us because you haven't been home in 6 months. Even when you are home, you're never here. And so he has this, quote, success in terms of financial success in his business, but he lost the things that he said he was doing it all for in the first place. And by the way, I'm over here learning from this guy, learning how to build a business from him. And so when I started my big thing was short sales here in St. Louis. And so when I started my short sale business, one of the reasons I started that business is because I love people and I love helping them out of pain. And so I liked going on the appointments. I liked the sales calls. Some people don't like that. That doesn't fit their vision. That's okay. But for me, I like that part of the process. But when I started learning from Chris Kirschner, Chris was teaching me how to outsource every single part of the process. Now, there's one piece of business that I don't enjoy specifically, and that is accounting, paperwork, all the crap that goes along with, which, by the way, is a necessity when you're in business. Somebody has to do accounting. Somebody has to do paperwork. Somebody has to manage the entire process. But I just don't enjoy that as much as I do being around people. And so what I learned from Chris was how to outsource every piece. So I had somebody doing the marketing for me. I had somebody, after the marketing was done, answering the phone calls. Then I had somebody going out on the appointments. Then I had somebody negotiating the deals with the bank. Then I had somebody setting up the closing with the title company when we have to buy it. And I have somebody selling it when we have to close it. And all of that sounds great to put it in a production line like that. However, fast forward 2 years into my business. Now I'm quote, successful by the external views mind, but I was the guy that had so much of everything outsourced that guess what my only role was left? Accounting, paperwork, management of the process. That's not why I got in business in the first place. Now, people would look at that and they will go, yeah, but it's a small price to pay for flipping 70 houses a year and running a, quote, successful business. And yet I was miserable. And I wasn't miserable just a year earlier when I was the guy that was helping people and so on. So I was following a recipe that was built based off of what Chris Kirschner even thought his business vision was. And I'd argue today whether or not that was his vision or whether he learned that from somebody else too. But, this is really important because I'm building a business based off of Chris's vision, not built on my own. If I was building it on my own, there would have been pieces that I would have outsourced, yes. But I would have continued going on the homeowner appointment because I really liked that piece. I liked sitting down with somebody who was facing foreclosure, and I liked helping them out of what was seemingly one of the most difficult financial positions of their life. I got a lot of joy out of that. When I outsourced all that, it was just the paperwork. I hated it. And by the way, people would hear this, or I would even have a hard time articulating it because it's like, you flipped this 70 houses this year. Suck it up, Buttercup. So sad for you that you just that's fine and dandy when you're on the external looking in, and especially when you're broke, you think, well, I'll sacrifice that stuff if the money comes in. That's not how to build a business vision from the first one. Money is an important factor in designing your business vision, but it should never be the first factor. And I know this because, to give you an idea, the guy who flipped 800 houses last year also came to me last year and he said, look, I've hit every financial threshold goal that I've put in place. I've hit all my numbers. I've done all this, and I wake up and I'm not happy. What is it? And he goes, I feel like a big whining, complaining wuss because I should be happy with everything I have. But he was in a similar situation as me, where he's like, I built it to what I wanted to build it to, but I'm not fulfilled. And so how do I have both? And that's what business vision does for you. So your roles are going to be very different than perhaps my roles might be in a business. That doesn't mean we both can't be successful. It just means we need to build them around what we want.
Okay, so Shaun, coach us a little bit on this point. So, and if you want to go back to and we can continue this through your story.
Yeah.
I guess a good word for this is stuck. So you're going around, you're working on your life, you're working on your business, and then you get stuck. You get at this crossroad where you wake up one day and you're like, wait, this isn't exactly what I want to be when I grow up, right? So what do you have any advice on getting unstuck? And how did you do it in this course? What did you do?
Okay, so to get unstuck and to not have the day where you this isn't what I want to do. Well, obviously, then you need to figure out what do you want to do, and that's what the vision process is. So there's a very specific means to an end here. What you have to do is you have to operate for just a little while. I always give the description of Disney as an organization. If you work at Disney, for example, you work in one of three departments. You may not even know you work in one of three departments, but you work in one of these three. First one is the Imagineering department. And so you can imagine what they do. They just think of cool stuff all day. They don't implement it. They don't engineer how it's going to work. They just think of the cool stuff, and that's it. That's their job. So they think of cool new movies, cool new characters in the movies, new rides to put into the theme park, ways to improve the theme park, things like this. When they're finished with their job, they then hand it over to the second department, which is the engineering department. And I know it sounds corny, but the engineering department is really important because they decide, do we have enough room for the park, in the park for this new crazy ride? Is this a theme for a movie that is going to be interesting to other people? They filter all of the ideas that came from the Imagineering department, and they determine, is this reality? Can we make it work? If so, let's design the plan to actually implement it. But the engineering department doesn't implement. They send now this idea. It's filtered through the first Imagineers. Now it's filtered through the engineers. Yes, it's possible to do this. Or more importantly, the engineering department, I should mention, they actually determine what they should say no to also. So, okay, engineering department or Imagineering, it's great that you came up with this ride idea to float through the theme park with a roller coaster that isn't suspended by anything it's just held up in the air magically. That's a great idea, but the engineers go, that's impossible. We can't do that. There's no way. We haven't figured out physically how to pull that off or whatever. So they say no to many things that they need to say no to. So when they say yes to the right things, they now send it off to they call it something else, but I call it the implementation department. So these are the people who work in the parks. These are the people who are actually taking the plans from the engineering department and turning it into reality. These are the people that are actually act in the movies. People think the actors are the Imagineers. They're not. They're saying a script that the Imagineers wrote, right? And so they're implementing the script. Now they do it with their own little imagination, right? They might add their own flair to it, but their role is they are implementers. And so I think you have to look at your own business this way. All of us naturally gravitate towards one of these three roles. And maybe you're not an Imagineer by nature, but for a little while to create your vision, you have to become that. Because you have to sit down long enough to imagine, if my business could look any way I wanted it to look, what would that look like? And so for me, when I first started doing this first time, I would say, I would never do paperwork again. I know that for sure. Or at least that wouldn't be my primary function in my business. Maybe I have to manage or oversee the accounting, but I wouldn't be the guy clicking in the books every single month and writing checks. I know that's a necessity in my business, but I don't want that to be me. Now, you might also say, that's all great, but I can't afford to hire a bookkeeper yet, for example. Listen, when you're doing that kind of thing, your brain is switching between the Imagineer and the engineer. And those people at Disney don't work in the same room together. There's a reason for this. If the Imagineers are all in the same room, let's say there's a dozen of them in a room, and their goal is to come up with really good ideas, but the engineers are in the same room at the same time, what happens is the engineers are constantly thinking, well, how are we going to pull that off? And so what they're doing is they're constantly shutting down the ideas of the Imagineers. They're not allowing the Imagineers to dream big because the engineers are going, well, that's a great idea, but it's not going to work. And so if this happens enough, eventually the Imagineers stop dreaming. And that's exactly what I think we do in our businesses too. So you have to become the Imagineer for a little while and tell the engineer, your inner engineer, I should say, shut the hell up for a minute, okay? I'm just dreaming for just a minute. We'll figure out how we're going to put it together. And then if we decide that the how is a feasible option, then we'll figure out the implementation of it. And that may or may not be you, by the way. But first thing you have to do is dream. And so when I tell people to dream, for some people, this is really fun. For other people, they're like, I don't know how to dream. Either my vision has been dictated to me my whole life by my boss or by other people or my parents or my spouse or whatever else, or maybe they're not naturally Imagineers in the first place. And so some people may need help with this first stage of the process, which is what I do with my coaching students. I actually extract from them what their vision is, and I only do that by asking them a whole bunch of questions. These are questions like, if your day could look any way you wanted it to look, maybe it's not the same every day, but how would it look? If you could work on anything, what would you work on? What are some of the things that when you're working on these things, time stands still, you're actually pretty decent at this group of things or maybe this thing, and when you're doing it, you don't feel like you're working. Time can sort of, you can work on something for 2, 3, 4 hours, and all of a sudden you look up and you go, oh my gosh, where did the time go? That's perhaps the things that should be in your vision that you should be working on. But you might say, well, okay, that's all great. Maybe some of the things that stand still for me is the planning of this, or the the structuring of which deals we go after and which deals we don't go after. But at some point, somebody's got to go on an appointment, right? Well, that may or may not be you, but the engineering department decides that. The challenge is that as a business owner, there's times where you have to be all three of these things, right? Especially if you're a small operation. So there's times where it's appropriate for you to be the Imagineer. There's times where it's appropriate to hand that idea over to your engineering brain and say, how am I going to pull this off? And then there's times where somebody's got to implement all this garbage, or else it's never going to get done. And the problem is most visionaries are such good visionaries, they tend to be horrible implementers, right? Or most engineers are so good at engineering and process, or figuring out how it works, that they're not very good at Imagineering. So there's times when you need help with this, especially if you're a small business. But that's where you start. You start by brain dumping. And I usually give people one quick example just to start with, so I can show you how easy this actually is. As corny as this sounds, real quick, close your eyes. I know this sounds cheesy and ridiculous, but close your eyes. I want you to think, just for a second, I want you to imagine the perfect dream house that you could ever possibly imagine. And while you're dreaming of this perfect dream house, I want you to have a couple caveats in here. First of all, I want you to imagine that anything you dream up in the next 2 minutes is going to happen. It's legitimately going to happen. And I want you to imagine the second piece of this, so that we remove your filter for a second. I want you to imagine that whatever you imagine in the next 2 minutes is not only going to come to fruition, you don't have to pay for it, and you don't have to maintain it. And I'm saying these caveats because I want to give you the permission and the freedom to dream however you want to dream. So some people start to dream and they go, well, I'm thinking of the perfect house, but man, I don't want to clean that sucker. Or I'm thinking of the perfect house, but man, that's way too much money. I'll never be able to afford that. Those are filters, and they're appropriate when it's time for them to come in, but not yet. So think of the perfect dream house. Keep your eyes closed for a second. Think of the perfect dream house for you, and think, how does it look? When you walk out from the exterior of the property, how does that property look? Is it siding? Is it brick? Is it in the woods? Is it on the beach? Is it in a neighborhood? Are there kids everywhere? Are there no kids anywhere? Right? And then when you walk in the front door, what do you see as soon as you walk in the front door? Do you see a living room? Do you see a big, huge open area? Do you walk into the kitchen? I don't know. Do you see a big open area? Do you see smaller confined spaces that are nice and warm and cozy? Maybe you don't see a house at all. Maybe you see a mobile RV or something like that. You say, I want to travel more, but what would be perfect for you, right? And hopefully by now, you can open your eyes now. Hopefully by now you've had some sort of an idea of what that perfect house might look like. And some of you may say, well, it's the house that I'm already in. That's fine. Then your vision is being carried out in that one area. But that's how simple it is to create vision. So you need to learn how to do this in your own business as well. And you do that by asking yourself questions. If I could do any business in the world, what business would I do? If I could do one activity in that business, what would I love to do? Or 2 or 3 activities, what would I love to do? What would I not do ever again in business if I had a choice? You may not have a choice right now, but what would you not ever do again if you had a choice? For me, I would never sit down and write a check again. Now, at the time, I couldn't afford a bookkeeper, so I don't know how I'm going to pull that off, but that's the engineering's job to figure out. We'll ask the engineer how to figure that a little bit later. Is this making sense so far, Jim? I know I'm going on.
So it does, and here's you're so good at this. Like, what's that saying? Sometimes you get like unconsciously good at something, and like, so the gap though, like, so I've been through this a little bit more recently with you. It's a little intimidating. So it's one thing to imagine the house, right? Or imagine what that perfect business is. Why do so many people then, I mean, to have the courage to do that, sometimes some people it's easy, some people it's difficult to do. But then the next step is arguably just as intimidating, like actually putting it pen and paper and like really taking the time to map it out. Like, has anyone ever given you any feedback, or do you have any theories on like why that's so intimidating to look within like that and then to get it on pen and paper? Like, what do you think?
Well, first of all, I'm not surprised that you think that, because you're naturally a visionary. And so being an Imagineer for you is probably a little bit easier than being an engineer or going and implementing every single idea that you have. But you have no problem coming up with really good ideas, right? And so this is where I say, most people's strength lies in one of these departments. Some people that are listening to this right now are annoyed because they're saying, just show me what to do. Those are implementers. They're like, just tell me exactly what to do. I'll go do it. I don't want to hear this vision crap, right? These are the implementers. And so depending on where you naturally gravitate, that's where it's going to be the easiest for you. So somebody who's not an Imagineer, who's an engineer, for example, they're going to have the hardest time just dreaming of, like my wife, for example. She is not an Imagineer. And so when I sit down and I say, let's come up with a vision for our family, she's like, how about you just tell me the vision and then I'll figure out how we're going to make it work.
That's great.
That's great. And that's great if she's willing to default to my vision. But if she's not careful, if I'm the only visionary in our family, then we're going to live my vision. She's going to wake up one day, could be a year, 2, 3, 5 years from now, but she's going to be resentful of me because I got to live all of my vision. She didn't get to live any of hers. Well, she didn't get to live any of hers because she didn't know what hers was and didn't take the time to dream for just a minute. But yes, and there's times, so if you naturally gravitate towards being an engineer, for example, you may need help from somebody who is more of an Imagineer to extract that from you. So I'm not suggesting this is easy. What I am suggesting is it's worth it. Because most entrepreneurs, especially when they come to designing a business, they design it with the first filter being, how much money can I make with this? And while that works for a little while, maybe, if that is not honoring what it is that you'd like to do long term, that's when you wake up unfulfilled one day. And by the way, there's no guarantee that you're going to make the money anyway. So along the journey, you might as well enjoy the process, right? By the way, when you are doing something towards your vision and something that you get excited about, you'll work 3 times harder for it because it won't feel like work. Which, by the way, that's when you'll probably end up making more money with it anyway. So this is the first filter. Your vision is the first filter always. Money for me is a filter, but it's like 3 or 4 steps down. So once I realize that something fits my vision, I have to say, okay, yes, I'm going to do this. Then I have to say, okay, I might need help with this. Who do I need to work with? I love what you're doing with 3 Doors here because you're providing a service for your affiliates where they can go do the piece that they enjoy doing the most, and then they can hand off the pieces that they don't enjoy to 3 Doors, right? I would love to be in an environment like this because of that. So, of course, if the piece that they're handing off to 3 Doors is the piece that they want to do the most, then that might not be a good fit, right? And so this is where it becomes really important.
Yeah, so that's fascinating that I gravitated towards this. So I'm an Imagineer and I'm an implementer. I can kind of do both, but I suck. I am horrible at engineering, at figuring out the plan on like how to get there. And like you hit it on the head. Like that's why I had so much kind of like fear or anxiety or stress on it was the engineering department. Yeah. But the Imagineer, no problem. So what's fascinating to me is just an awareness of just know who you are, know where you gravitate towards, and you just have to be comfortable with being uncomfortable a little bit, right?
Yeah, man.
Yeah, and
it's interesting you say know who you are because that's actually stage 2 of the vision process. So,
well, let's go through it. Let's do it.
Hey guys, just wanted to let you know that we're launching a free Facebook group to continue the conversation about this episode or really anything and everything else that's on your mind. We're calling it Doors to Deals, and we'll have access to the to the Facebook group on our website, doorstodeals.com. You can also find it on Facebook as well. Doors to Deals is the name of the Facebook group. So if you want to continue the conversation, connect and meet people and help us launch this thing, please join the group. I'd love to have you on it, and I look forward to kind of seeing you online on Facebook. Thanks, guys.
It's interesting you say know who you are, because that's actually stage 2 of the vision process. So,
well, let's go through it. Let's do it.
the very first one is your vision out of your head. It's great if it's in your head, but it's 100 times more powerful if you get it in writing. And so I want you to brain dump. Let me finish for stage 1 real quick. I want you to brain dump as much as you can, right? Brain dump. Ask yourself all those questions. What would I do if I could do anything? How would that look? Who might I work with? Who would I not work with again? And to give you one example of this, in my coaching business, I had an interesting process where I had to come up with a way to figure out who do I want to work with and who do I not want to work with. This is part of the vision process. So I literally took a whiteboard and I wrote 3 columns on the whiteboard. And I asked the question, who would I want to work with if I could work with anybody? And so I thought, well, I would want to work with doers. I would want to work with implementers. And then I thought, well, wait a second. Let me take these 3 columns on the board and let me get an idea of, let me write down the characteristics of who I would hate coaching on one side. Who would I hate? Well, that would be somebody who is a non-implementer, somebody who never does what we talk about on coaching calls, somebody who whines and complains about everything. That would be the awful side. And in the middle side, I wrote, well, who would just be okay to coach? And I actually wrote down people I had coached in the past because I had the privilege of having experience in this area. And I wrote down who did I kind of not love to coach, but was just kind of okay. And I literally wrote down their names and I wrote down why were they just okay? What characteristics did they have that were just okay? Which, by the way, you may think this has nothing to do with your business. You should be doing this for what deals you go after, for sure. Which deals suck? Which ones are just okay? And which ones do you love the most? Right? So I did this with my coaching. So middle category came up. And then in the right-hand side of the category, I said, okay, who would I absolutely love to coach? And I wrote down names of people that I've worked with in the past, and I wrote down their characteristics. What was it about them that I absolutely enjoyed coaching? And these are things like, man, they were coachable. They were already high-level people. They were already doing that. This is my vision again. They're already doing big things. They just need help getting to the next level. They're willing to take what we do in our coaching environment, and they're willing to actually implement it and turn it into action. These are people that don't come back to my coaching retreats every single time with the same freaking problem over and over. They have new problems because they've implemented everything that we talked about before. And then one of the biggest characteristics of them getting into that third category was this. I often do one-on-one days with my students where they fly in from all over the country and we spend a day together, and I help them either get their vision out of their head, or I help them come up with a strategic plan on how they're going to get there, or I help them come up with an implementation plan. And so, I thought, if they were coming out to stay at my house, would I rather them stay at my house if they're coming in from out of town, or would I rather them get a hotel? I thought, what a great filter for who I want to work with. This means I actually want to hang out with them too if they're going to get in that third category. I like being around them. Maybe we have fun together too, all of these things. And so when I built my business, one of the reasons that I love my coaching business so much more today than I've ever loved it in my life is because I did this process. I don't let anyone in my group unless they fit into that third category. And there's a whole list of things that I filter through people. It's not just money. And by the way, you might say, well, it's really hard. So my coaching program, to give you an idea, is $10,000 just to get in. And it's $1,000 a month to stay in. And you might say, well, that's really hard to turn someone away who's willing to pay you $10,000 and $1,000 every single month just for coaching them. And while that's true, I also know if I don't only put people that are in that third category, I'm going to wake up and I'm going to be unfulfilled in my coaching business. I'm going to probably hate it. I'm probably going to, I have had people in that first category that I didn't look forward to coaching. And I knew I didn't look forward to coaching because I thought, man, if they weren't paying me, I wouldn't be talking to them right now. I wouldn't hang out with them. We wouldn't even be friends. I thought, that sucks. That's a crappy business model. And how dare me even take someone's money if they fit in that category? And so when I rebuilt this 2 years ago, I built it with that in mind. And guess what? I love my business now. I very rarely feel like I'm working, even though I work hard in my business, but I'm doing the areas in which I want to be doing and that I happen to have a couple skills in. And also, it's the most profitable that I've ever been. My expenses are lower than they've ever been also. So you may say, well, this is kind of corny. This is not corny. So this is the most important thing you can do. So take the same example for which deals you go after. You may say, well, I've done these types of deals in the past. Or, by the way, you may not even know if you're brand new which deals fit into which category, but you can guess for right now, or you can interview other people and find out which deals fit into their categories for them. And so you may say, well, which deals do I would suck for me? Well, it would suck for me to, spend $100,000 on a rehab and spend 6 months renovating that thing and, put 50 grand into it and then sell it for 160 and only make 10 grand. That would suck for me. So I don't want to do that. Right. And what would be kind of an average deal for you? What would be just okay? And then what would be a slam dunk home run for you? And this is where it takes a little bit of discipline to honor your vision, because there's going to be deals that come up that you say, well, this doesn't really fit my vision, but I can make a quick $2,000. Let me explain something to you. It's never just a quick $2,000, right? Or it's never, when you compromise the things that you've written in your vision, it's never as easy as you thought it was going to be. I may say, well, I'll just take on this student because, I have 3 groups of 15 and, this guy's willing to pay me 10 grand right now, and having one bad seed in the group or even an average seed, it's not that big of a deal. Yes, it is a big deal because it brings down the overall average of everybody in all 3 of my groups. And it might not be the end of the world if I make that decision once. But again, if I'm filtering whether or not I should put somebody in because of money, I'll take any jerk face that wants to get in the group that has 10 grand. Pretty soon I will have a crappy coaching group if I do that. Right? And if I do that too many times, I'm going to wake up hating my coaching call days, which I do with everybody once a month. So that makes the difference between a business that I love and a business I don't. You guys should be doing the exact same things with your deals. But once you've done that, once that vision starts to become clear, it doesn't have to be crystal clear because it's going to grow and move as you get closer to it. I always consider the vision a living, breathing, growing document. But once it is somewhat clear to you, then you have to go on to the strategy. How am I going to pull this off? And if you're Jim and this is not your skill set, you're probably going to need help from somebody else who is an engineer brain and they can think through. Matter of fact, if you're an eternal optimist, which most entrepreneurs tend to be, they tend to look at things like, oh, I can pull this off. I can do 200 deals my first year. You might need to have an engineer brain in there saying, hey, pump the brakes, Tiger. Let's see if 200 deals this first year is realistic. If so, let's come up with a plan on how we're going to do that. Do you realize how much marketing you're going to have to do to pull off 200 deals in your first year? Do you have that in place? All of those questions need to be answered too. The problem is they can't be answered while you're dreaming. If so, then you'll filter what you're dreaming. That's why that's why I put, when I was giving you the idea to do with the house, come up with your vision of the house, that's why I put those caveats in there. Imagine that whatever you decide is, or that you can dream up right now, is going to be paid for. And imagine you don't have to take care of it or pay for it ongoing. When I put those caveats in there, people tend to dream bigger than they would if I said, oh, and by the way, anything you dream today, you have to figure out how to pay for it in the next 3 months. Most people wouldn't dream big at all. Does this make sense?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely, man. So what's fascinating is the clarity. So we talked about this last week too on Levinson's call, and like just knowing yourself, knowing who you are. And he was able to bump a rehab 30K up from what he thought it was going to sell for, because he just poured into it great quality of work, right? And the kind of the caveat to that on that call is make sure you know yourself, know what you want to do, know your skill set, because as entrepreneurs we hear like, oh, this is a tax credit project, somebody made $100,000 on it, oh my God, I need to do it. Well, hold on, slow down. Make sure that fits your vision. Make sure that it's not a shiny object, because the brilliant thing if you Google generating leads online is that you can find 1,000 ideas on how to do it as an investor, right? The difficult thing is you can find 1,000 ways to do it, and they all work. It's just, are you going to take the time to do it really well? Does it match your skill set, and does it match your vision on who you want to be when you grow up? I love it, man. I love it.
What you just said is so important, especially in real estate, because I see the most successful people that I see in the flipping business, for example, are people that hone in an area at least. The person who goes out and right off the bat tries to master rental properties and tax credit sale properties and do rehabs and do short sales and do lease options, they fail at all of it because they didn't pick one niche. And that sounds really scary when you're first starting out because you don't know which niche to pick. So you got to get a little bit of freedom to pick one, though, and then pursue that, and then obviously maybe adjust your results if you're not seeing success where you want to see it there. But give it some time. The people who I see who are the biggest, for the lack of a better word, failures in business, they try to become the master at everything, and therefore they're the master of nothing. And so in the beginning, pick one area that you want to get and become a master in. So if you come across a property, for example, that is a tax credit property, and you don't know anything about how to maximize the tax credits or how to sell those or how to capitalize on them and all that comes along with that, then you may go out and put that property under contract, but go ahead and dump it off to another person who does know that. And maybe you'll make a quick 10 or 15 grand instead of the potential to make 50 or 60, 7 or 8 or 9 months from now. But it's going to take you 7 or 8 or 9 months just to understand how the tax credit program works. And you're probably going to screw it up for your first deal. So you might as well wholesale that off to somebody who knows that inside and out. I'd rather see you make a quick 10 or 15 grand now than, wait 7 or 8 months and still only make 10 or 15 grand because you don't know what you're doing and you screw it all up.
And this is like the people that just first get introduced to the network, what I don't think they really fully understand is the power of that, of like having someone that you trust that knows tax credits because they're in the network, right? And it is it's an incredibly powerful thing to be able to at least monetize that opportunity and then go out and focus. Like, we think too much about that 70 grand that we could make, but we don't realize if I'm learning all this tax credit stuff, I'm now not finding the next wholesale deal, or I'm not finding the next other thing that I can get really, really good at, right? Yeah, I love it.
This is really important for what it is that you guys do. I know enough about your model now to know that you guys are partnering with people so that they don't have to do pieces of the transaction that they may not be ready for or may not even fit their vision in the first place. So, and I have people say this all the time. They go, well, why would I partner with somebody, let's call it Three Doors or anybody else for that matter? Why would I bring a deal to the table, partner with them, and give up all this income on the back end? And I said, because you look at it as giving up income. I should have partnered with somebody on that first deal that I did, because quite frankly, if I would have brought that deal to somebody like Three Doors, for example, you guys would have looked at that deal and you would have said, dude, this isn't a deal, first of all, right? There's not enough margin for error here. So if any one thing doesn't go exactly how you've envisioned it, Mr. Eternal Optimist, you're not going to make any money on this. Matter of fact, you have potential to lose a lot of money. I probably wouldn't have gone over that first deal in the first place. So people that are new look at that and they go, well, gosh, that cost me so much, though, to work with a coach or to work with Three Doors or to partner deals with them. Look, if all it does is help you determine which deals to say no to, I lost $86,000 on that first deal. It took me 4 years, by the way, to pay that back. And I will tell you, that was a much harsher lesson than it was partnering with somebody who could have taken on the hard parts that I wasn't prepared for anyway. If I would have had Jim, for example, if you would have gone through that first property in Chesterfield, you would have known, because of your experience level, if that's the only thing, you would know, because your experience level, to pull back the carpet a little bit because it felt slightly squishy in one area. You would have pulled the carpet back and said, oh, this entire subfloor has been damaged. And now we need to fix the subfloor, which, by the way, on top of the subfloor, underneath the carpet was wood flooring. That sounds great until you got to replace all the wood flooring. My repairs on that property that I thought were going to be $8 grand tops ended up being 22 grand. Well, I don't have 22 grand. So now, instead of partnering with Three Doors and having them find that in advance, which, by the way, even if you are Three Doors, you're going to find some things in a rehab that you didn't see going into a property, right? So at least Three Doors has the experience to say, hey, man, your numbers are not only wrong, but if we factor in a fudge factor here for other things that we may not even see that's wrong with the property, there's no margin in this deal. You guys would have advised me not to take on the deal, or maybe if I do take it on, to do some special owner financing with it, or maybe structure it in a way that was much more creative than I would have ever thought of in the first place, because you guys know this because of your experience. So this is what I mean, like, pick a niche in the beginning. Maybe your niche in the beginning is you're just the person, because maybe you have no money, but you have time. You're just the person that like markets to find leads and then goes on appointments and tries to lock things down. And then maybe you partner with Three Doors. So Three Doors actually gives you the evaluation of the property, or maybe they're the ones who provide the money for the property, so you don't have to find it somewhere else or something. And I'm not suggesting you have to do this with Three Doors. I'm just saying, when you get your vision crystal clear, you know your piece of it, and then you step out of the way, you let other people who are experts in their area do their piece too. That's what's going to get you where you want to go. Not becoming an expert at tax lien sales, short sales, wholesaling, rehabbing. You're never going to be all these experts at all of these things. I'm not even an expert in all these things. I've been doing this now for 16 years. I know my lane and I stay in it. Because of that, I'm able to be massively profitable in my lane. I'm able to outsource the pieces that don't fit my lane, and everybody's happy.
So, okay, so we are Man, I've been entrenched into this conversation. We're getting on time here, so 10:45 already. I just chatted everyone. If anybody has any questions they want to chat over, please do, and we can try and get to a few of them. But with us kind of running heavy on time, how are we doing with everything you wanted to talk about today, Shaun? Is there anything else to kind of squeeze in?
Yeah, before we take questions, let me jump into stage 2 because I started to go there.
Yep. Yeah.
So stage 2 is know yourself. And you said that before. This is really important. So you need to know yourself well enough to know, are you the people person or not? So I just told you, as a beginner, you may decide to go out and meet with people and make offers and all that stuff. But if you suck at that and you know it, then that's not going to be you. So don't try to master something that you know darn well you're not going to enjoy and that you're going to suck at. It's like I have people come to me wanting to learn how to speak in front of an audience, and they don't want to do it. They just think they have to. It's like maybe there's something else that it comes naturally and easier to you that you could master if you put a little more time in that. Don't try to master the things you're terrible at. And so for me, I'll just give you my example here. In my business, I knew that I loved serving people. I knew I loved being around them. I knew I loved helping fix their problems. And so for me to go on the appointments in a short sale business really made a lot of sense to me. Now, it didn't make sense to me after I started learning from Chris Kirshner because that was not his vision. He said that was a waste of time. To me, that wasn't a waste of time. That brought me joy, and it also had the ability to produce fruit. And so I should have been doing more of that, not less of it. I shouldn't have outsourced that ever. You may say, well, I suck at sales. I suck at dealing with people. In that case, you shouldn't be doing it. Maybe you need to partner with somebody who is good at that piece of it so that you can be the accountant in it. Or maybe you need to take a job as an accountant. There's nothing wrong with taking a job as long as it fulfills the needs that you have. Maybe that is your vision. Maybe you take on a partner with somebody who is really, really good at the sales aspect so that you can be the management side of things, or you could be the engineer and figure out how to structure the deals and everything that comes along with that. But you need to know yourself. And there's a couple of tools that I tell people to go use when it comes to knowing yourself. These are personality profiling tools. If you're a part of Three Doors, Jim, I don't know how much you've done predictive index with my brother Mike, with all the people on this call or not.
So we do a tremendous amount, and we actually have for those of us that were at the retreat, we actually had him do an index on the people that were at the retreat. Yeah, okay. So we've done quite a bit. Yeah.
Okay, so that's one resource. If you haven't done that yet, maybe see Jim or Ryan on how you can do it. But the reason I bring up predictive index is because it tells you a lot about who you are and where you're going to excel. It doesn't mean that you're incapable. Like for me, it doesn't mean that I'm incapable of doing bookkeeping. I'm just not going to do it long term. Matter of fact, my first year in business, I did not hire a bookkeeper because I was broke because I lost 86 grand on the first deal, right? My second year, I started to close some deals and make some money, and I hired a bookkeeper. When I did that, I found out that this is crazy. And this is actually a year and a half into business. When I finally hired a bookkeeper, I had him go back. It took him like 2 months to reorganize all my books that were such a mess from me trying to do them for the previous year and a half. And when he fixed them all, he came up with an interesting observation that I would have never caught. He said, look at this. He goes, you hate writing out the bills every month, don't you? And I said, yes. And he goes, but you don't just hate it, you despise it. And I said, yes, how do you know that? And he says, because if I look back at all of your bills in the last year and a half, you have enough late fees, not because the money wasn't in the account, you were scraping by, but there was money in there, but you have enough late fees from paying your bills late, which means to me that you've been procrastinating sitting down and paying your bills every month, not because the money's not there, because you just don't like doing it, but there's enough late fees that you paid in the last year and a half to justify me being your bookkeeper this last year and a half.
Oh, ouch.
and he's right. Every month I would sit down and I'd be like, I know I got to pay bills. I got to do that today. And to me, that I didn't want to do it. It seemed like a waste of time. Like I know it needs to be done, but I hate doing it. And so I would procrastinate. And my bills would always be a week or two or sometimes 3 or 4 weeks late. Not because the money wasn't there, but because I hated writing checks that much. I could have paid for him with the same amount of money I spent in stupid freaking late fees. Now, you may look at this and you go, okay, well, I don't have any money yet anyway. Some things like this, you will justify paying the bookkeeper to do these things because you could have been out making more money. Now, when I would sit down and do the books, it would take me to write out all my bills and put them in QuickBooks and learn how to do all that. I would stress out about it. It would take me 6 or 8 hours to do what my bookkeeper, Matt, can actually do in about 45 minutes. And Matt is only like $35 an hour. So for me to sit down with Matt and have him do all my books in 45 minutes, how much more money can I have made by paying him to do a job in an hour, $35? How much more could I have made if I would have focused 8 hours on my marketing, for example? I should have never been doing that. So this is where knowing who you are is really, really important. And Predictive Index will help you do that. There's 2 other tools that I'll give you that are free right now. Actually, one of them is free. One of them will cost you about $50. But if you've never taken a DISC test, go take it, DISC. You can take it. It's free online. I believe Tony Robbins bought out the company maybe 10 or 15 years ago. But he has this free survey that you can take online, and it'll spit out maybe a 15-page report, something like that. And it'll tell you who you are. Are you somebody who is really decisive, or you need help making decisions? Are you somebody that needs to be around people all the time, or do you rather work in your little cubby by yourself in your own little world? There's nothing wrong with who you are, but you got to design your business around this. So if you want to take that, go look up, do a Google search for, I think if you look up Tony Robbins DISC, then it'll take you to a link where you can fill that out for free. Another one that you should take, and really, especially if you're in a partnership or if you're married or ever want to be, go take the Kolbe. It's called the Kolbe, Kolbe, Index A test. And that'll take you maybe 15 minutes to take. But the reason that one's important and it's different than some of the other ones is that tells you how you take action. Are you someone that needs lots of information and then eventually you'll take action? Or are you somebody who needs very little information and you're acting on something even though you have none of it figured out yet, right? I can see where if I'm working with Jim and Ryan, for example, they both have different skills. There's no wrong profile here, but Jim is very much a quick start. He has great ideas and he needs very little information. He goes off of intuition a lot. So when he's ready to move forward with an idea, it's because he had the idea yesterday and it's a great idea and he's ready to move forward with it. That's a great strength. However, if he's also working with Ryan, Ryan tends to need a little bit more information. He'll still make decisions. And Ryan doesn't make decisions slowly at all, but compared to Jim, it's slower. And so Jim might think, man, he's holding me back. He's too slow with this. I'm ready to move forward, which, by the way, is what I had challenges with a previous business partner of mine, too. And it wasn't that Ryan is slow at making decisions. He just makes them differently than Jim. And so if they know this about each other, they can use this as strengths. Jim does have really good ideas, but Jim also really could use somebody who has a filter and says, well, wait a second, these are great ideas, but we also had 10 other great ideas last week. And so which one of these are going to rise to the top of our priority list? If Jim has that, he could be on fire. But without that, he's going to probably get himself in trouble. And so, and I can relate because I'm the same way, right? And so knowing yourself is stage 2. It's really, really important to know who you are, where you fit, so that you can make sure you're in the right role in your business. If you're not in the right role, first of all, the chances of you being successful financially or anything else is really, really going to be a challenge. Second of all, even if you get there, you're going to wake up one day and you're going to hate it. That's exactly what happened to me.
So, and so what's cool about it too is you can like if you're aware of it, you're then can be a little bit more aware of like how people are going to interact with you or things that you're going to do to like upset people, and like so like literally like I'm such an extreme on the independent side of things that like I have like a word that actually the Gary Boomershine call that you did. He said that his word was like patience for like a year. So right now my word is patience, and I'm telling myself over and over again, patience, patience, patience. But if I have that awareness of myself, like I would just be driving people batshit crazy, and I would be able to like grow as a person, grow and help everybody grow as well. Hey, well, Brian,
that's not easy for a guy like you who is a pretty fast quick start. I mean, you're Kolbe quick start. I don't
no, I mean, it's bad enough that like Ryan literally was like, Jim, you need to probably not work at the office all 40 hours a week. Like you probably need to get out in the field and let us do stuff so you don't come with another idea or whatever.
Well, let's talk for a quick second because that is a strength. But you are a natural visionary. And so, and you also like to implement, but you're not so much of an engineer, right?
Yeah.
So, and by the way, the reason you're such an implementer is because you're a quick start. You're really a visionary at heart. You come up with a lot of really good ideas. You want to quick start them you want to implement them because you're faster than most people at implementation, not because you should be the implementer of everything. And so if you look at a guy like Gary Boomershine is who Jim just mentioned. He's one of the guys in my leadership boardroom group. I think he made $18 million last year, if I remember correctly. To give you an idea, he owns realestateinvestor.com. Pretty good domain name, right? But Gary is the visionary for his company. And so his staff and partners, the people that he works with, basically told him, look, you're a very powerful visionary. And because of that, we need you to stay in your lane. And we also need you to get out of our way. And so, Gary, we don't want you in the office as much anymore. And at first, Gary was like, whoa, he's offended by this, right? But now Gary does some things that to most people would seem like a waste of time. He spends every single morning, he works out for 2 hours. The reason he does that, obviously he has a vision for how he wants his body to look, but also because that's where some really good ideas come to him. And he's the ideas guy. So he needs that time, which other people would look at as like, why are you at the gym for 2 hours? You're wasting time. You should be working. He is working. He's doing his area of expertise. After he leaves the gym, he lives in San Diego. He goes and gets in his pool for about an hour. Now, if you're an employee and you don't understand how visionaries work, you would look at that like, Gary's lazy. He's not as hard of a worker as us. That's complete crap. When Gary's in the pool and when he's having some of that time, he is coming up with the vision for where the company's going to go next and how they're going to do things and all of this stuff, which is crucial to the growth of their team, which is why they said, we don't want you in the office anymore. You know, I tend to be on the visionary side of things too. I tend to be like Jim, and so I have visions for stuff and then I want to immediately go implement them. But for me, some people go, why do you go for a motorcycle ride in the middle of the afternoon when there's 4,000 things to be done? There's a reason why. When I go for a motorcycle ride, it helps me clear my mind, it helps me think, and my visionary skills become that much more important, which, by the way, when my vision is crystal clear, I probably won't have to implement most of what I was getting ready to implement because it was such a quick start, because most of the things that I have ideas for, if I filter them through the vision, don't fit the vision in the first place. So it's like the visionary stuff is really important. If it's not you, you should be working with somebody who is more of a visionary than you so they can help you through it.
Yeah, and it's like every great strength has its weaknesses, and you know we get the right team around us. We can we can counteract that, right? We can play on that, and then that's how you kind of the rising tide raises all ships, right?
Right.
So okay, so we are going to close on time here. Bryant, you had a question. You said the name of the last test again. I think it was Colby Index, right?
No, KOLB, and you want to take the index. They have different tests, but take the Index A test. I think it's either $45 or $50, but it's money well spent. Especially if you have a spouse. Oh my gosh, take this with your spouse. I've been going through this stuff with my wife recently, and this is real interesting. I'll keep this quick. My wife, her sense of urgency is very, very little. Mine is not sky high, but it's on the higher end of the chart. But because we're so far apart, she views me as like everything you're doing has a sense of urgency. I don't know which things are a sense of urgency. Therefore, for me, nothing is a sense of urgency, so I'm not doing any of it. And I was looking at this like when we would work on a project together, I was like, come on, this should be done already. Like, get off your butt and do it. And I'm getting frustrated thinking that she's being disrespectful with me. It's not disrespectful. It has nothing to do with me. It's that her profile is different than mine. And so I need to learn how to adapt and get better with that, because it's not her that's the problem. It's my outlook on who I think she should be, because I think she should be more like me. What I need to do is chill out sometimes. Everything doesn't have a sense of urgency. And so in many ways, I actually respect her, because I think, man, how can you just chill out and relax like that? I can't do that as easily. I have to work to be that person. So I learned to appreciate that in her. That's what Colby Index A will help you with.
Okay, we had one other question come in, and then we'll wrap it up, guys. I know we're getting on time. So, what's your opinion on affirmations and vision?
Affirmations, meaning basically reading your vision back to you and telling yourself you can do it?
Yeah, I mean, so the question was, does he use affirmations with his vision? Oh, wait, so Angie and Tanya just told me, by the way, the URL you gave doesn't work.
Oh, really? BusinessVisionWorkshop.com doesn't work?
Yeah, it's not working. But yeah, so Brian just texted back I mean, what's your opinion just kind of on affirmations and vision? Just a 1 minute opinion on it, and then we'll wrap this up.
Well, I think having your vision in front of you regularly is a really important component of actually living it. Now, if the only thing you did is write it one time and that's it, and you got it out of your head and on paper, you'll begin to make progress with it just because it's in the forefront of your brain. But when you have it in the forefront of your brain on a regular basis, that's where the real power comes in. I mean, I look at mine regularly, and I update mine. At minimum, I update mine at the end of every single year. I am going through this process myself right now. And so I wouldn't be asking you guys to do anything I don't do myself. I do it every single year, if not more than once a year. And I do mine for both business and for my personal life. And so, admittedly, I'm not necessarily the guy that sits in front of a mirror and tells myself you can do this and things like that. Although I think that has use for many people who decide to do that. But I do look at my vision regularly. I plan my calendar based off of it. I decide what I'm going to work on next and what I'm not going to work on next. I say yes to things that fit and no to things that don't. Matter of fact, one of the detriments I see of entrepreneurs is they say yes to everything, again, because they're opportunists. And when you say yes to everything, pretty soon your calendar fills up. And you've said yes to so much in your business that there's nothing left for things that you said were important to you, like family, your hobbies, your health, all of those other things. And so the vision is very important to have in front of you regularly so you can say yes to the right things and no to the wrong things. Yes, I do practice this myself.
So I do. So I have the vision, and I actually recorded myself saying it, and it kind of annoys me because I was on a walk when I did it, so I'm like winded. So I've listened to the recording of my vision winded, like annoyed with it a little bit because of that. For like, I try and get it in 5 days a week. I probably only remember to do it 3 or 4 days a week. But I try and do that every day after I'm done working out and I'm driving home, to just kind of have that on replay. So, and that's been working for me, just to keep it.
I always tell people, look, put it where you're going to see it. If you got to put it, maybe laminate it and stick it on the wall in the shower so you can read it while you're going to shower, hopefully once a week. So, think that'll be the place where you're going to see it all the time, or next to the mirror while you're getting ready. Or if you're somebody who gets on the treadmill every day, put it up in front of the treadmill and read it while you're running or walking or whatever you're doing. Or put it on your screensaver of your computer, whatever that you're going to be in front of regularly. I'm telling you, man, the implementation of your vision, it's almost magical how it starts to happen when you do the process and when it's in front of you on a regular basis. You'll start to live these things, and there's a part of you that won't even know how you got there. But it's because you got a direction now. So it's really important.
Yeah, I mean, I can't reiterate enough and thank you enough for helping us through this. It's been really instrumental. It's really helped us get to the next level. So really do appreciate all the help, buddy. And the link, why don't we just figure out the link thing? We'll send a note out to everybody after the fact on this as well. So cool. Well, I appreciate it, man. Thanks a lot. You the man.
Thanks for having me. I hope you guys got something out of this. If the only thing you do from this is do an imaginary exercise where you just brain dump, just get out of your head. If I could have the perfect business, you may not know how to get there, which, by the way, there's steps 3 and 4 that we didn't cover today, which is determine where you are now, and then you got to come up with a plan on how you're going to get to everything you wrote down. And that's a process in and of itself, which is why I want you to come to the workshop. But if the only thing you do right now is get the vision out of your head and get it in writing, you'll start to make progress towards it. Even if you don't know how to do the other steps, you'll start to make progress. So for right now, between now and the end of the year, I want to encourage each of you, get this process out of your head, and don't schedule it for next February when you have some free time. There is never an appropriate time to do this. You just have to do it. And don't schedule out a whole day. Start by saying, I'm going to brain dump for 15 minutes. You don't have to be overwhelmed by this process. Just start it. When you start it, it'll start to get fun, then you do more. Thanks for having me, man.
Appreciate you, buddy.
All right, guys. So for this particular show, go to doorstodeals.com/004. Again, that's doorstodeals.com/004. Go out there, live your purpose, and above all else, go after your dreams. Take care. Thanks for tuning into this show. For more episodes and resources that will unlock Doors to Deals, check out our website, doorstodeals.com.